Welcome to Ancient Awakening with Castalia. For those of you who don't know, I am Castalia and I am the host of this podcast, and I do work over on the Realm of Inspiration and at Amphiaraus.com to help inspire the collective on their ascension journey. I work to help heal and guide through my channeled readings and coaching sessions. I am a certified card reader, crystal Reiki master, and also certified in Greek mythology and ancient Greek gods and goddesses, as well as having a passion for ancient Greek history. What better way to combine both of my passions and the gifts given to me by my ancestors and the history of my ancestors than to uncover these spiritual metaphors hidden in the myths? The teachings and guidelines are already there before us. They are just hidden beneath the surface of stories full of tragedy, heartbreak, war, death, love, and more. The time for metaphors is done. So let's find clarity together through a transformative journey that is Ancient Awakening. And in this week's episode, we are doing the art of channeling in mythology, in Greek mythology specifically. To channel is to surrender, not to emptiness, but to presence. In Greek myth, mortals did not claim divine wisdom. They became vessels for it. They inhaled sacred vapors, entered trances, danced in madness, or dreamed beneath the earth. They did not speak for themselves. They spoke as the gods. In this episode, we explore the art of channeling, the sacred transmission of divine truth through mortal breath. At the center is the Pythia, high priestess of Delphi, who sat upon the tripod and became the voice of Apollo. But she was not alone. Cassandra, cursed to speak truth, no one believed. Tiresias, blind but all-seeing. Amphiaraus, whose wisdom and wise prophecies whispered through dreams. And the Bacchae, who danced themselves into divine possession. These figures remind us channeling is not performance, it is devotion. It is the art of listening so deeply that the divine speaks through you. And it begins not with certainty, but with surrender. But before we dive into this week's episode, let's review the journal prompts from last week to help us set the tone for this week's episode. So as always, I'll give my short summary answers to the 5 prompts from the previous week. So the first prompt was, where in my life am I hiding a truth I'm afraid to face, and what would it mean to name it? I would say, in my life, a truth I'm afraid to face would probably be, I'm not quite sure, I really did struggle with this. It's very, very personal as well. When these get super, super personal, I really don't know how to talk about them in these videos. But kind of a less deep cut would probably be my channeling gift. And with what this episode will be my channeling gift, because the truth of that ability is sometimes scary. And when I meet with new people and I'm in new environments, it's very do I mention this? And sometimes I feel compelled to share a message or do something or follow that intuition, follow that guidance in it. And even the intuition part can be kind of scary. And so the truth of listening to that and listening to the truth moving through me is sometimes it's difficult. But I named it, and to name it and talk about it is just to honor your authenticity. Number 2, what part of me seeks control or power out of fear, and how does that affect my choices? Again, super personal prompts. But in general, I would say I do seek control in regards to fear when I'm in situations where I'm scared. Out of fear, seek control out of fear. If I'm scared of the outcome of something, I try to control the outcome. I guess. I don't really do that much anymore, but I definitely did that a lot. When I started understanding and sensing the outcome of something, and I didn't like it, and I was scared of it, I would try to prevent it. I was a generational cycle from Chronos and myth to the modern Greeks, and trying to avoid prophecy, trying to avoid what is destined. That clicks in my brain. That's really funny. But yeah, sometimes I don't really do it much anymore, but I've definitely had it happen, especially if I had dreams, which is foreshadowing for later in this episode, especially when I've had dreams of things and I try to like prevent them from happening, and they just happen anyway. I've learned to just, instead of trying to avoid it, just, Spirit, where shall you guide me? And I will be there. Instead, just accepting it. Just like, it's really just easier to accept things than it is to fight them. Number 3, when have I denied or mocked something wild, intuitive, or feminine within me, and why? I will honestly say, when I was in middle school, high school, end of middle school, I had like my quirkiness. I had my quirkiness at the beginning of middle school. About the mid of middle school, the mid of junior high, I got scared of my quirkiness. Now I got it back. It's just like a more matured thing. But my quirkiness was like my femininity and my, you know, my wildness in a sense. Like, I mean, wearing feathers and colored hair extensions, and I had like 50 pairs of sunglasses, and I always had a pair on my head, and that was more because I was like an emotional security blanket, because I was taught like not to cry in front of people, so I put my sunglasses on. But that's something else. That's something else. That is for my journal later. But no, I already did journal that. I just thought that would be funny. I also did try to like hide my humor. Example. Or just in general, you know, made fun of who I was before, when I was like in that like weird stage where you're making fun of how cringy you were. Now I love and honor all versions of myself. I think some versions of me were really fun. I think that it was really fun and funny that I would wear, you know, blue colored hair extensions and feathers, and I would dress with like fun colored pants, because I do that now. And it's fun. But I mocked it in myself because other people were mocking it within me, and I ended up becoming my own worst critic. And you have to, you know, realize that the societal judgment of others, and I always wonder when I think about the myth of Pentheus, like, was it the societal expectations of those around him that prompted him to act the way he did? And to be so judgmental. I feel like a lot of times when we judge ourselves, like, it's really from the judgment of others. So it's time to obviously overcome that, right? That's the goal. Next is, what labyrinth have I built to avoid confronting my shadow, and what thread might lead me out? I couldn't really think of anything for this. Sometimes at the start of journal prompts I just go, and it just takes me a minute to get there. I just gotta go through the processing. That's what I did with this one, because I think that like currently, I can't think of like an actual example. In the past, I used to do that when it came to my fear of change. So I would try and like build a labyrinth to avoid change, and try and make myself stay in situations I shouldn't be in, because I want to keep things the same. I mean, I've been doing that until recently. It's just like right now I am like not in my hermit stage again, but more like I am selective of where my energy is. So, and I've really worked with trying to embrace change, so it's very rare that I have those experiences again. But the thread that led me out was honestly, I don't know what it was. It just happened where I just accepted, change is gonna happen. Honestly, I think it was moving. It was getting out of my hometown and coming back to my family in Greece, and seeing different potentials for life, and seeing the beauty that it is to be free enough to just like randomly decide one day, I want to go to the Acropolis. Randomly decide one day I'm just going to go to the beach and I'm going to go work there. And like really having that freedom to make that choice, like, I just kind of randomly do this, and just changing the way I was doing things all the time, that helped. So I recommend that. Just realizing, like, hey, I have free will. I can just, like, decide to do something, and I can do it. And who's in charge of me? Only the creator. Like, really, nobody else is my boss but the creator. So, as long as I'm not harming anyone, what's the harm in doing something that makes me happy? You know? Lastly, if I met my lower self as a mythical figure, what would they say and what would I say back? My mythical figure is probably Tiresias. No, it's, actually, it would probably be the satyrs. It would be my lower self. The, like, half goat, half man. I just, that is kind of how I would picture it. Also, like a, like, gargoyle or goblin or something, but that's not like a Greek mythical figure. But sometimes I could see that. The satyrs in myth, the half goat, you know, Pan has some other, you know, things there, and I love goats. I love goats. Don't get me wrong. It's not like a diss to those mythical figures or anything, because actually, technically, the centaurs were more like aggressive and harmful in myth than the satyrs. But I do think that, like, I could see that, because just like getting very much like lost and just like having fun and the theatricality of everything, and you know, the ego, the pride, you know, I'm thinking of the ones that would be a part of like Tiresias' troupe and just like following him around rave to rave, and being too earthly. I think in general the lower self is very earthly, and kind of keeps you too grounded to the earth, too grounded to like more animalistic things, and forgetting your intellectual capabilities, and your higher spiritual potential. And you know what I would say? I would say, not today. I would say not today. I would say I am in control, and I love and honor myself, even for the moments where I was listening to the lower self more, but it is not your time to run the show anymore. You had your fun when I was a kid. I had lots of anxiety. I lost, like, myself. I was conforming like crazy. You had your fun. It's done. For the rest of my life, you're in the backseat. That's it. And calling it out is really not being ashamed to call out things like that is super important. And the art of channeling in modern day in regards to spirituality is the ability to channel messages from a higher power. And I do channeling over on the realm of inspiration. I connect to the frequency of inspiration and channel the messages from it. So I will have in the description, as always, all my links for everything. For my book that I wrote about channeling, so about awakening the channeler within, because the art of channeling is so much deeper. It's really allowing your highest self to step through. So that is also included, and I'll also have linked my other channel, so you can go check that out. If you didn't come here from that channel, because I'm sure a lot of you came here from that channel, to go and understand more about like the modern and current and present art of channeling. So I was very excited to talk about this in myth, because I have found examples of it in myth, and I really think it's so fascinating. Like, it's a very interesting thing, because in the myths, all the messages that come through the Pythia or Cassandra or Tiresias, these messages, these prophecies, and prophecies in general, they were all true. And they weren't like negative things. They were the truth. They were the truth being communicated. So what's very fascinating is that when, you know, we get to like the BC periods where this is then being called possession and it's something wrong. But back then in ancient times, you know, factually in history, they would go to Pythia in the Oracle of Delphi to receive guidance when it came to wars and things like that. People would go there and they would receive true messages. So, and it was messages that helped them, that helped guide them. So the fact that like when we get to the BC periods that this concept was demonized, when it's actually something that is so real, so powerful, so profound, transformative. When I tap into it, There is no way I could know the things that is flowing through me. But because I worked on my healing journey, I didn't talk or interact with people for 9 months. I became a hermit. I worked on my healing, and I still am. I have protections in place with, the archangels. I have a specific routine in place. I'm doing it safely. I'm doing it only with connecting to the frequency of divine light and love. If you want to see more about that, go to my other channel, because in quite a few of the videos that I do, I also do my protections in the video, so you can see what I'm doing. And to know that it is so profound, and it has helped so many people connect to source, so many people connect to their highest self, and that this art was demonized, because if we could tap into ourselves and connect to God ourselves and receive the messages ourselves, then the preachers don't have a job, So there is this huge thing that's a big miscommunication I wanted to clear up when I wrote my book, Awakening the Channeler Within, and also just in general when I put this in the cup, is like, this art has been demonized. It is like psychic mediumship, it's just a little bit different. And obviously the examples that I have are like, different levels of it. Channeling is the big umbrella for psychic mediumship, these other things, for even healing, energy healing. It just depends on the type of channeling you do. If I were to pick a myth that showcases the type of channeling that I do, it would be more so the myth of Pythia, which isn't just a myth, because also she was actually, it was actually happening. So history, like, she was actually delivering prophecy and messages. So that would be the closest example. And obviously the first thing I thought of when I thought about the art of channeling and myth, which also, like, my namesake being in Delphi, and just like in general, something was written in the stars for me. So that I have to honor that. So we're going to talk about Pythia first. The Oracle of Delphi, the voice of Apollo. Her role was to be the high priestess of Apollo, and she was seated on the tripod at Delphi. Her channeling style was trance possession, which I don't like the word possession. I don't, because it has such a negative connotation. Such a negative connotation. Like, I wouldn't describe it as possession. I would describe it as, like, you're a radio, basically. It's like a transmission, not a possession, because possession implies that you have no control over the situation. In the case of Pythia, and also the way that I do it, I have control. There is no, like, I am there, I'm present, I have control. I step back, let the radio transmission come through. I don't always remember everything, but I'm in control. At any moment, I can just be like, I'm done. Possession, you don't have control. You don't have your free will. That's a negative thing. So I really don't like that word, but that is the way that they describe it. But that would not be correct. The correct thing would be more of a transmission. Because you have full control, and that's the thing. The scary thing, I think, for people who don't want to understand the art of channeling is that if they accept that you have control and you are allowing a transmission to flow through you, that's scary. Because how do you have the control to allow that to happen and they don't? When people are afraid of something, they're going to demonize it, and they're going to use negative words, negative sound frequency around it. That does not mean that what you're doing is negative. It doesn't. Possession, you don't have control. Channeling, you do have control. So it's more of a transmission. And she also would do the inhalation of the vapors. Obviously, there is a scientific theory that the specific type of herbs that were being used caused her to get high. But at the same time, it could have, at the time period where the frequency of the earth was, it's likely it helps her. Now in modern day, we've evolved a little bit that we don't need assistance in that way. But also, if everything that was coming through was true, whether or not it was vapors or what it was, she was connecting to something else to be able to deliver those messages. So the Pythia, in regards to the myth, in regards to myths in general, entered altered states to deliver Apollo's prophecies. Her words were cryptic, poetic, and often double-edged, guiding kings, cities, and seekers through riddled truth. She was not a seer by birth, but a vessel by ritual. She did not speak for herself, she became the god's breath. It's not the same person. So Pythia was just obviously the name for the woman who was taking on that role. It changed. The Pythia changed over time. It was who was being the communicator for Apollo. And who was being the communicator for, truthfully, the spirit of Delphi. Because there are some theories that she was channeling the spirit of Greece, that she was channeling the spirit of Delphi, and that it came through to the Pythia in the archetypal form of Apollo. If there is the theory, which I definitely believe, that Athena is the archetypal representation of Athens as it's changed over time because her abilities and what she represents as a goddess changed over time. Apollo is the same for Delphi because he's the patron saint of Delphi. Patron god of Delphi. The patron saint of Delphi is Archangel Michael, which I also say that a lot, so that's where my brain is. My mind wanted to mention Archangel Michael, the protector. So that being the case, I do find it, again, side note, very fascinating. You know, Greeks, we had during, you know, the polytheistic time period where we took these archetypal energies and that was a religion. There were the patron gods of the city-states, and then as we switched to Christianity as a nation, then every city has a patron saint. So some things really didn't change. You just like, okay, instead of Apollo, it's gonna be Michael. We're just gonna switch it. Which I do find fascinating. That in general, no matter what the religion is, we do have the belief that the cities are protected by a higher power, which is beautiful. That's a side note there that just like came through me. But in the specifics, with this, I do feel like Apollo is definitely also representative of the archetypal energy of Delphi. I have been to Delphi many times. I've not explored Delphi to the lengths that I've explored Athens, but that's just because I have spent more of my life in Athens, comparatively, but I do try every year to go to Delphi, at least once. And I can, also because my namesake is there, but I can really feel like, it was probably more that she was channeling the spirit of Greece or the spirit of Delphi, and it came through represented as Apollo, because I do really feel like out of all of those in the pantheon, when it comes to representation of Greece and Greek values and just like the Greeks, I do really personally feel like Apollo and Athena, as well as Poseidon and Hephaestus to some degrees, and Aphrodite, I really do feel like Athena and Apollo, for the majority, do represent a lot of, like, when it comes to ancient Greeks, about them. But in general, the things they represent, like Apollo's poetic, he's the healer, he is the prophecy bringer, he is like the superstitious one, like he's this type of archetype. And Athena is more the logical, the strategy, the wisdom, the intellect, and they really balance each other out in a different way. Obviously Artemis and Apollo balance each other out in a certain way because of the twin thing, and Ares and Athena have the, like, that they are the opposite of each other. But when you really think about it, there is that true representation of divine feminine, divine masculine, and the balance within each other. Like Apollo, he has both the divine masculine and divine feminine within him, and Athena has both of the same. They're both very balanced. You know, Delphi has just as much cultural and historical and mythological significance as Athens. They're both pretty up there. I mean, Sparta is too, but when you really think about it, there is just more history in Delphi when specifically it comes to the myths, but in general, they're pretty big. Obviously Corinth and other areas too, but those are two big ones. Like the Oracle of Delphi is pretty well known. Obviously Athens is pretty well known. There is a balance there. And I would really venture to guess that the Pythia was maybe channeling the spirit of the land, and it was coming through in that way. I couldn't find specific examples in myth of anyone like channeling wisdom of Athena through, like in that same sense as Apollo, but Apollo was the god of prophecy. And when people were using their intellectual mind, maybe in some way they were connecting to the spirit of Athens. I do find myself when I'm in Athens, I connect more intellectually and I seek more things intellectually. And when I'm in Delphi, I am seeking more things spiritually. And just the energy of the land, I feel that. And that also makes me want to, metaphorically, spiritual metaphors in myth. It makes me really believe that the whole pantheon, the whole, ancient Greek mythology pantheon, came from what people sensed energetically. Next is Cassandra, the cursed prophet of Troy. She was a princess of Troy, gifted and cursed by Apollo. So again, Apollo being this archetypal representation of prophecy, which I really do believe it. I want to do like 50 episodes on Apollo, his myths. Like he really represents like that balance. Because anything to do with prophecy, he's always there. Anything to do with like channeling, he's there. Fortune telling, he's there. He's always there. He is like, it's like Apollo is the name for what they referred to when it came to prophecy. It's like, it's Apollo. Like, it's this person. Prophecy is so big, it's this like thing we don't understand that we're just going to give it a name, and it's Apollo. And then we're also going to call a million other things Apollo, because Greeks we're creative, but not very creative with the names. Like every other person's named, Yorgo. It's maybe that's what it was. I would love to actually find examples that prove that in myth, that it's like, oh, that's why things don't add up. It's like they were trying to find like a metaphorical name for a concept they didn't understand, and because so many things didn't make sense, it's like, well, this kind of feels like Apollo, and this kind of also feels like Apollo, and this kind of I really like this theory. It's not very like spiritual metaphor-y, but it might be correct. It's very funny to think about. So Cassandra's channeling style was divine insight without consent. So this was she was given the gift unknowingly. I don't like the word choice without consent, even though that is how they would describe it. She was gifted this gift. She was chosen for this gift of prophecy. The gift of prophecy chose her. She didn't necessarily know or want to be on that path. And I can relate. When I was doing my healing journey and I was told, you have the ability to do this thing, go to events, go to people, like, share the wisdom coming through you, do coaching, do this. I was like, why me? Why me? I don't want to do this. But then it would come to points where I'm talking with people and suddenly I'm like reading them, and I'm not in control of it fully. I'm just intuitively, from a different way, like clairaudiently, I'm feeling guidance, I'm feeling insight. So I'm talking to the people and I'm sharing in just regular conversation, and they're like, wow, this conversation really helped me. And unknowingly I was channeling it in a way, because it's a big umbrella, right? I don't, because the gift found her. It was cursed by Apollo, but the curse was that nobody would believe her. And I think we can confuse the curse being for the gift of prophecy. The prophecy is not a curse. That gift was not a curse. The curse was that no one would believe her. And she had to accept that gift. So Apollo gave Cassandra the gift of prophecy, but when she rejected his love, he cursed her. So again, I don't like this without consent example, because we like to, anything when it comes to Apollo, oh, consent isn't there, whatever. It was a gift. The gift of prophecy found her. It's not something you can just decide to do. It finds you. Okay? And I really think like gift of prophecy is just reading energy in general. He was the god of prophecy. He had the ability to gift people with the ability to see things, to see beyond the veil. So he gifted her that ability, and she, she took the gift, she accepted it, but then rejected his love. So he cursed her that she would always speak the truth, but no one would believe her. I think a lot of women have experienced this. A lot of channelers, psychic mediums have experienced this. I've experienced this where I know, I'm even doing a card reading, I'm working with a client. I know that what I'm seeing, what I'm feeling, what I'm sensing is the truth. And that person doesn't want to accept it, they're in denial. And it's like this curse has affected anyone in this field where you're gonna have those people who are in denial so much that they are not believing what you're saying because they don't want to believe it, but you know it's the truth. And it's such a frustrating position to be in. And the thing is, she still had the gift. She still followed the gift. She still tried to deliver the prophecies, even though no one believed her. She foresaw the fall of Troy, her own death, and Agamemnon's murder, which we've talked about in previous episodes, Agamemnon. All of those were ignored. And obviously in retrospect, they're like, why didn't we listen to her? It is like this myth explains how the spirit of denial entered men, how the spirit of denial entered humans in general. Like, if, let's say Pythia is the spirit, or Pythia, Cassandra is the spirit of truth, right? She's the spirit of truth. And Apollo decided to curse the spirit of truth by gifting humanity denial and avoidance. Because that's kind of what it feels like. It's kind of what it seems like, right? So in this myth, this example is just keep speaking and sharing your truth. Whether or not someone believes you in the moment, that's up to them. The truth is going to find them, sooner or later. Obviously, she saw the fall of Troy. Troy fell. She saw Agamemnon's murder. He died. She saw her own death. Of course, she died as well. So, the thing is, when you have if you feel any sort of guidance, pull by source, God, creator, to deliver a message, to speak, whether or not someone believes you, speak. Because, she spoke her truth. Someone didn't believe her. Okay. It's on them for not believing her. Them for being in denial. Them for dismissing what she had to say. But at least she knows she spoke the truth. And that's the important part. So that gets us to Amphiaraus, Syria swallowed by the earth. So warrior prophet, participant in the 7 against Thebes. He was a dream oracle after death. He foresaw his own death in battle and tried to avoid it. When forced to fight, he was swallowed by the earth and became a chthonic oracle. His sanctuary at Orpus offered healing and prophecy through incubation dreams. Seekers slept on sacred ground to receive visions. Even in death, he whispered truth through dreams. Now, this is another art of channeling. So Amphiaraus, he was a psychic through dreams, a vision through dreams. I know people who receive visions through dreams. I sometimes have dreams that are honestly a little prophetic. Like, I will have the dream, and it's so scary to me when it happens, even though I know that this happens. But when it's so close to when I had the dream, it's a little scary. It's like, whoa, what are we doing here? This is a little jarring to me. But it's a true way of receiving messages, and you also can't avoid it. You can't try and change it, and you can't change fate. We've kind of talked about this before, especially with Kronos, in the very first episode of this channel. Is he tried to avoid his fate, and in doing so, he sealed his fate. You can't avoid the inevitable. I really like this, warrior prophet, dream oracle, because it gives some insight. I'm sure back then, so many people were having vision-like prophetic dreams that didn't make any sense. And if you can make this one person, Amphiaraus, be like, he had this. This is something that happened. And now he has a sanctuary at Orpus, and can help you understand this. I really see this as a deeper metaphor to, you know, it could almost be, I want to say like a little placebo. So seekers slept on sacred ground to receive their visions. I wonder, let's propose a theory that the people who went seeking this were actually people who were receiving visions in their dreams, and also energy of the land, very real. Maybe that area, that specific land, had very grounding energy, and just where it was located geographically was a portal. And I do want to go to, you know, the ruins of Orpos and figure this out, because it definitely was a portal energy where when they were there, there was clarity, ego removed, and they could make sense of the dreams that they had. Because sometimes I will have the same dream multiple times until I understand the message in the dream. I've had this happen to me multiple times before. My dream journal sees repeats. So, you know, even in death, he whispered truth through dreams. What's fascinating is I also feel like departed loved ones give us truth through our dreams as well. And I like the idea that, you know, connecting to ancestral land brings clarity of those dreams, and also helps clarify the visions and the non-physical, you know, beyond the veil, helps us understand the life on this side of the veil. There's definitely a lot of that in his myth. And speaking of that, Tiresias, blind seer of Thebes, this one, there is, I feel like, again, so much truth to what it means to channel in any sense. Like, with this specific one, he was a prophet who lived as both a man and woman. Divine insight through transformation and blindness. Tiresias was blinded by the gods, but gifted with second sight. So this is clairvoyancy. This is the third eye, 100%. And dream visions, definitely there's a myth about that. And this just proves to me, like, there are myths about these things. Obviously, these things were happening, right? For them to be talking about them. So he was blinded by the gods, but gifted with second sight. He advised kings, interpreted omens, and spoke truths others feared. This is a common theme. I would also venture to guess that people were receiving truths in their dreams that they were scared of. You know, the previous myth. So to have clarity to that, to no longer be afraid of the truth, is very important. His gender transformed after striking mating snakes, gave him unique insight into duality, and his blindness shaped his inner vision. If this is not balancing the divine feminine and masculinity within when you go through your awakening journey and activate your psychic gifts and abilities, I don't know what is. And the snakes, mating snakes. Snakes are cleansers of the earth. They cleanse ley lines and imprints. They remove blockages. And they're also representation of the Kundalini energy, rising Kundalini, if it's mating male and female, the divine masculine rising ascension and the divine feminine rising ascension, to bring alignment of the chakras, aligning of all things, so that he had the ability of clairvoyancy. The third eye opens. That's the biggest one. And here's the thing, you know, the myth and the stories that he's been placed in, eventually I'm gonna have to try and understand Oedipus from a spiritual metaphor perspective. That is not today, but you know, he is such a mythical, metaphorical example. Like that's what it is. Like, really, when I sat down and I'm like scripting this out, I'm like, yeah, Pythia 100%, it has it here. No, this one's my favorite. My favorite by far, because it's right there. And when you lose like the sight of the physical reality, you gain the sight of the non-physical, so that you can help aid the physical reality. It's there. It is there. It is there. And it's very powerful when you think about it, because how else would they think of that? Like, I know, like, sometimes as humans, we think of crazy things, but pretty much all the crazy things we think of are based in something we experienced or we heard, right? So this being such a true metaphor for what the awakening journey is, awakening your abilities, awakening the third eye, it's like he is a metaphor for the third eye. His myth is a metaphor for the third eye. How the third eye awoken, you know? Like, I obviously, I found this to talk about, like, the art of channeling, and now I'm diving into the other metaphors of him as, like, a character in myth. But, you know, the two mating snakes, clearing ley lines and imprints, clearing negative energy, clearing the root, rising kundalini, opening the third eye, blindness to the physical, but open to the spiritual reality so you can see all things clearly. Speaking truths others feared, interpreting things that other people don't understand, opening up the spirit. Transformation. So speaking of transformation, finally we are at the Bacchae, which we did talk about last week. The Bacchae was last week, I believe. Ecstatic mediums of Tiresias. Women possessed by Tiresias. Trance, dance, sacred madness. So again, I don't like the term possessed, guided, but actually in the sense of the Bacchae, maybe possessed. It's more of a trance, more transmission, more using dance as a way to cultivate energy. So the Bacchae entered altered states through ritual, wine, and dance. And trance, they became vessels of Tiresias' wild wisdom, capable of prophecy, healing, and destruction. So this is the negative side of things as well. Their possession was divine but dangerous to those who mocked it. Like Pentheus. We talked about Pentheus. So we did talk about him last week. They did not speak, they became the god's rhythm. So here's what's interesting here. I do think that, you know, with everything, there is obviously the negative side. Anything can be used negatively. When I read the myths of the Bacchae, I do not think that anything they did was, like, truly destructive. See, it was more like delivering justice in that sense. We kind of have to think about the way that things worked then versus now. Different levels of, you know, emotional and mental and spiritual, you know, evolution. They, you know, when you receive a gift, it can be so easy to, like, get so earthly with it. You know what I mean? Like, getting very earthly with the gift. So I even see this now, this, like, frozen awoken state. If I were to put, like, the Bacchae, like, where in regards to, like, channeling they would be, I would say frozen awoken, because they know their abilities, they know their capabilities, they know they have power, and it's a choice. They're choosing to dance. It's not possession. They have a choice. They can stop dancing and stop channeling. This is the frozen awoken state, because they end up also using it for not so good things. But it's like, oh, I have this power. How else can I use it? And you can see this when there are, you know, scammers and fake people who, they understand spirituality, they understand the concept of channeling, mediumship, healing, whatever it is. They've tapped into it a little bit, but not enough. And they're like, I'm gonna become a business person. I'm gonna sell this, I'm trying to make money. And there is consequences to this, obviously. I know I've come across, you know, myths of the Bacchae having consequences. Not many, not that I can remember off the top of my head right now, because I could not, like, actually find them when I'm researching. But, you know, when you choose destruction, I mean, I guess if you can think of the consequences, Pentheus' mother was the one who ripped him apart, was one of the ones who ripped him apart. So that's her consequence. Obviously, her son dying. There, we got it. Of using your gift for something negative. Obviously, from Pentheus, if we, like last week, Pentheus' perspective of what they were doing was that it was something wrong, right? I mean, they're connecting to, you know, the wisdom of Tiresias. So he saw it as something scary, and it became something scary for him. So I also believe that the Bacchae can be a representation of how you perceive the gifts that they possess. Pentheus was scared of them, so he experienced something scary. And this can be true in, like, anything, even life. How we perceive something is how we experience it. And there's definitely a representation of that. If you perceive the art of prophecy, channeling, and healing as something scary, that's what you will experience if that's all you're open to experiencing. If you perceive it with an open mind, that's why we say open-mindedness is so important, because you will only experience what you are open to. Only experience what you're open to. So, I mean, every time I have a client, we call on Archangel Gabriel, we call on the guardian angels, and we're like, open your mind. You're gonna invite you to open your mind. Because if you don't open your mind, then the egoic brain, the lower self last week, the egoic brain is going to prevent you from the true experience. So had Pythias gotten over his lower self, he might have experienced the true experience. But because he was in that fearful state, he experienced the negative side. So I also definitely see that with the Bacchae. Especially because the way that they're doing it is through dance. So they're connecting to their sacral chakra. So it's channeling with the sacral chakra, right? With the solar plexus and with the root, because they're dancing. And so Tiresias, he would be with like more the third eye, obviously. Pythia with the throat and heart. I feel like a little bit of like the heart chakra, the way that she channels. The dream sleeping more like the crown chakra. Cassandra, blocked throat. Heart. So you also kind of see the chakras a little bit too, and what they're using in regards to channeling. So that being said, for sure they're using the sacral. So there is, the sacral is the one chakra that has like such like, I would say the most positive and negative stuff going on, because you have your negative cords of attachment, but it's also like healing and transformative and cleansing and creative and manifesting. And I want to do this. If I were to put the Bacchae at a chakra that they represent in regards to channeling, it would be the sacral, just from their stories in general. Can I do this now? Tiresias, I would put obviously the third eye. Amphiaraus would be the crown. Cassandra, I'm gonna put it the throat, because cursed, so it's like the negative side. Pythia, I'm gonna put it either solar plexus, the heart, solar plexus, the heart. I'm gonna put it the heart, but also the third eye. But like, if I'm gonna give them each one, I guess the heart, and that would leave me with like two others, to put it like the root and the solar plexus. I don't know if I can think of any right now, like in regards to like the art of channeling, like channeling through each chakra. I mean, Apollo himself, I would put at the solar plexus. At the root, like the spirit of the earth, kind of, potentially Gaia, like angelic mother Gaia and myth, like rooting all things. Another time, another place, a different way, in regards to that. Channeling is not about knowing, it's about listening. The Pythia did not speak for herself. Cassandra did not ask to be heard. Tiresias did not see with eyes. Each became a vessel, a bridge, a breath between mortal and divine. In myth, channeling is not performance, it is surrender. And in our lives, it begins when we stop trying to control the message and start honoring the silence it comes from. So as you leave this episode, ask not what you know, but what speaks through you. The divine does not shout, it whispers. And you, like the oracle, are already listening. So let's have some affirmations to set that foundation. First, I am a vessel for truth, clear, grounded, and receptive. I honor the wisdom that flows through me, even when it arrives at mystery. I trust the voice within, even when the world does not understand it. I surrender control and allow sacred insight to guide my path. My intuition is not noise. It is the echo of the divine. And for the journal prompts to set us forth into next week, firstly, when have I felt like a vessel for something greater? And what did I speak or create? 2, what rituals, spaces, or states help me receive insight or guidance? 3, have I ever ignored or doubted a message that felt true, and what was the result? If I were an oracle, what question would people come to me with, and what would I say? 5, what does divine transmission feel like in my body, and how do I honor it? Now, I am very excited to see your answers to these prompts, because I'm excited to talk about them. As opposed to like how I struggled at the beginning of this episode with the prompts from last week. While these ones are personal, they're personal in a sense that like I love to talk about them because This is what I do. So I'm really excited about it. That being said, let's pull from the cup to see what next week's episode will be so we can get to next week faster. All right. So, let's see. We'll leave it up to the fates as always. Okay. One fell and one I pulsed. So we're going to try it again. Seeing one good pull. This is a little one. Let's see. I'm so happy about this one. This is like the perfect segue from the art of channeling, and I was already excited for next week's episode. We're going to be talking about the Delphic Maximus. So this is not necessarily like mythic, but I do have a book from Delphi about the Delphic Maximus. And the Delphic Maximus also has the Delphic Ypsilon, which I am wearing the Delphic Ypsilon because I got it in Delphi. So this is like a little birthday present to me. I also think this episode's coming out around my birthday. So yay! So yeah, the Delphic Maximus. This will kind of be like the LFC Mysteries one where I'm just like, it's actually like Greek history, but there is also mythic elements and just more about Apollo, and I was feeling that. I'm happy about this. So if you are completely unfamiliar with the Delphic Maximus, you're going to be very familiar with it by next week's episode. Next week's episode might be like way longer. Some of these episodes have been like half an hour, 50 minutes. Maybe next week's episode is for sure going to be an hour because I can talk about the Delphic Maximus all day. So we're going to be doing that next week. Until then, I encourage you to allow yourself to awaken your ancient gifts and abilities from your ancestors, and let's remember why we are here and connect to your gifts and abilities. Do not let the limitations of the physical prevent you from connection with the non-physical.